good morning. Oh, no, it's not good morning. It's good day somewhere in the world and good evening somewhere as well. And welcome to my lovely, lovely fellow Reiki podcast women. We have Michaela giving a wave over there and Carrie, give us a wave and a pussycat wave as well. I see down there too. Hello, pussycat. Oh, so gorgeous. Today we're going to talk about a subject which for many people can be very controversial, was a word which we've just been discussing, stressful. It brings up a lot of different things, and the subject is money. So money. I was actually thinking about it this morning and I thought, I should sing. What was that? Oh, yeah, money. But anyway, I'm not going to. And because I can't remember all the words to start with. But yes, so we're going to talk about money. And the reason why we're talking about money is because in the history of the system of Reiki in the West, I'm not so sure about Japan and how that all fits together. Or actually, I do know a little bit about that, which we can come up with later. But in the West, definitely, there's been a lot of discussion about should we charge for Reiki treatments, Reiki courses? If we don't, why not? If we do, why should we? And for me, I just wanted to say at the beginning, just to put it to a little historical perspective, that I think that women are around something like 80% of the population of the system of Reiki. So being a woman really has something to do with this whole thing about money, because if you look at what it means to be a woman and to be dealing with money, it's only the last 150 years that we've actually really been able to claw back and fight for some autonomy as women controlling their own financial existence. So I did actually write down a couple of facts in relation to this, because I thought it might be interesting for people, because we don't really realize how recent a lot of this is. And so I know that in the UK, for example, in 1982, now in the 80s, I thought that we were, free feminists. Women were finally allowed to spend their money in pubs without being refused service in 1982. And in USA in 1981, a husband couldn't take out a husband could no longer take out a second mortgage without telling his wife. So before 1981, he could just take out a second mortgage and not tell his wife. Okay. And, these are just some of the fun ones. But in reality, it's been a struggle the whole way along. And women, when we had children, we were told, or when we got married, I should say, we were told we were no longer able to work. So any financial independence that we had was gone. Yeah. And we had to rely upon a partner, a male partner, for anything that we needed financially. So those things only changed after World War II, and only gradually. And in some countries, it took a lot longer. For example, Australia, we were about 20 years behind everyone else with that, with changing that rule. So, and things like credit cards, you couldn't get a credit card without them asking things like, are you married? Are you thinking of having children? I mean, really? So that's luckily that changed in the 1970s. So there are a lot of different things that we've had to fight for over the years, and property was another one, of course, as well. The right to have our own property, and we can see that historically women are then affected by that. And so we might feel today that we're very autonomous, but in reality, this is our history. And this is our recent history. And these are the things our mothers and our grandmothers and their and our great-grandmothers, whoever, that we've all had to go through. And we've had to, hey, I see a kid. It's all good, Carrie. Hello back there. And so, we've seen that happen, and we've felt that happen, and it's affected our feelings towards money. So I'm just going to hand it over to someone else now. And Michaela, go for it. How are your feelings about money? And how do you see women in the system of Reiki dealing with, with what historically has been an issue for us?
Yeah, it's such a big topic, and I appreciate the historical context that you've set out for us here, because there's a lot of different angles that we can and probably will talk about this topic. For me, when I think about the historic and recent historic and ancestral relationship that I have with money, I think about my childhood being raised by a single mom and, witnessing her be the breadwinner of my family and, the one that provided for me, at least most directly that I could see. And so there was never any question that earning money was something that I was supposed to be doing. And, the question of kind of doing work without earning money was just not in my mind. And then the struggle to earn enough money, over time, how to do that, and kind of slowly realizing that there are ways in which being a woman impacted that. And so when I think about my relationship currently to my business, to my Reiki practice, to the fact that I'm now a single mom at the head of my household with, supporting my kids, I would say that my relationship to money is one of mutual respect in a certain sense. And there isn't anything in me that feels that I should not be charging money for my time and my expertise and my skill, in the realm of Reiki. At the same time, there's also a constant interplay about how much to charge. Is it right? Is it fair? Am I making it inaccessible? And there's been certainly many times, with a trajectory of improvement, but many times when I've undervalued myself and when I have underpriced my services, anything from a Reiki session to a class to a customized something experience for folks. There's certainly many points along the way when I was aware that I was undercharging, and times when I was not aware, and then I only came to that realization later. And there's always a certain, I don't know, rush of fear or something when I set a price that I know is like the correct value. Like this is what this is worth, right? That number, whatever that number is. And the thing that's interesting is that feeling of like fear or resistance, or that kind of, thrill of anxiety when in saying this is the correct price.
Yeah.
It's so often in my own head, because I very rarely get reflected back that my prices are too high or that it's inaccessible or unfair. So that feeling of like, I'm charging too much and I should be lowering it, or this is scary or nobody's going to accept it, is self-generated for the most part. And so that's the place where, even though I've always viewed women as earners and as, viewed myself as holding that role, there's still that internalized devaluing that happens. And so when the conversation comes up and when there's, opposition to even the idea of charging for Reiki at all, there's a little bit of a, I don't even know if I could put a name on the feelings. It's a milieu of guilt and frustration and, I don't know, all kinds of stuff that happens around that conversation that I'm aware of. So I'm really glad that we're, kind of creating this space to talk about from the inside out, right? From our feelings out. What is the relationship between Reiki and money, women, and charging money for the practice of Reiki, and how to hold all of that inside of a space of integrity that works for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. And Carrie, how about you? Yep, sound.
Goodness. It's such a hot topic. And I think just one of those ones that is undoubtedly kind of stirs up a lot of emotion, I think, for everybody. Yeah. So to give a little bit of background, my family, as I was growing up, it was interesting that a lot of the facts you shared were like at 1981 and 1982, which happens to be the year I was born. So it feels like something like, like in my lifetime, seeing some positive shifts. Of course, we there's many more to be seen in this conversation around women and money. So my dad, he was a primary breadwinner for our family. It was a family of 6 of us. And I think during, most of the formative years of my childhood, my dad made something around like $45,000 a year. And so definitely like lower income. And I'm astounded, actually. And I look back at all that my family gave to me. I mean, not only just my father sharing like basically every single penny he earned with our family, and then also the sacrifice that my mom made to be a stay-at-home mom, and all the work that she did, like completely unpaid for. Like there was like literally like no reward for her, other than like the betterment of our children and for children. And I think it was her life purpose in many ways. Like she put so much of her soul into raising her children, and I deeply admire my mother and my father for all of their sacrifices that they made for our family. But I say that there is this imprint that was given to me through that, was that like I have had a hard time. I see so much value in what my mom gave, but it took me a while to get there. And there was a sense of just like this kind of ignorant entitlement around my mother's time, her energy, me, and realizing that she was never compensated, for everything that she did for us. And I remember at one time she got so frustrated, and my dad was like, "Can I give you $20 a week just for you to spend on whatever you wanted?" And she was so grateful for that. I mean, it's simple things, but that experience reminds me of, this is that kind of generational and ancestral trauma that all women really have inside of themselves. And so certainly I'm on a journey of unwinding that for myself.
Yep.
I found that for myself, like I always wanted to have a career. I always wanted to earn and, have my own independence financially. That was always very important to me. It inspired me to get my master's degree. And what I came up with after I got my master's degree, I just kind of landed straight into a wall of a lot of my own issues around money, and also being a woman in a male dominated workplace. I just found that within my background in environmental science, that like most of those jobs were very male driven, and the culture inside of those jobs I just did not resonate with at all. And I have found a lot of joy in being a solo practitioner for over 12 years. And that freedom to just do my own thing, to be creative, to share healing with people in a different context that I would like never be able to do the work that I do within the confines of a traditional corporate job. So that freedom was exhilarating, and it continues to be exhilarating for me. But I spent, most of my ability to earn for the first part of my career was based on my time. And I had an abundance of time as somebody who, didn't have another corporate job. So yeah, I could take a client here and I could teach a class here. And I found that after I became a mom, that I was working 6 days a week, often for over 14 hours a day. And I would have inner, spaces in my schedule and stuff that I wasn't working, of course, but it just always feels like there's this pressure of work and earning on my shoulders. And that's something I've always really struggled with. So to make a long story short, when I became a mother, my whole ability to earn completely came to a steering halt. Like it was just like done, over. And I became, and I wasn't happy about this. I actually feel sometimes a little shame about it, but I became overnight after my son was born, completely reliant on my husband for everything. And of course that stirred up a lot of my issues around how I was raised. But that vulnerability that I felt after having my first kiddo, and like not having the ability to just go out and earn, was debilitating. It was deeply traumatic for me, and is something actually I'm still recovering from now. My oldest is now 4 years old, and I've been working honestly nonstop to try to break that cycle and be able to earn fruitfully on my own. And I'm still in a process of doing that. And so I guess one of the points that I wanted to mention that is I saw an article about this very recently, is that Delta just changed their policies for stewardesses, or I should say stewards or stewardesses, is that it used to be that you always were unpaid until the doors closed in the flight. Probably not the same for pilots, but the whole work of getting people onto the plane was completely not like, they just didn't pay for that, and they only paid you for the flight. And I mean, of course, most flight attendants are women. So there's that interesting thing. And there's a huge parallel between that and teaching yoga. So for many years, I taught yoga, and it was a big part of my income. And it was a huge part of the culture around teaching yoga is that you show up 30 minutes early and you leave somewhere around 30 minutes after your class, but you're only paid for the class time.
Yeah.
And that's not even considering the driving time. It was insane. So those were all these things that made teaching yoga as a mom very unsustainable for me. And so I'm still trying to actually kind of figure out that gap for myself. But what I do say is that for any woman out there who needs to hear this, is that your work is so tremendously valuable. And that so much of we give as mothers, as women, as healers, as workers is actually invaluable. Like, you can't really even put a price on your time, your education, your experience, the healing that you provide. And that the most thing that you can be grounded in, if you are searching to find your value, that the biggest thing to find value in is your time. Your time away from your children, your time away from anything else that you'd want to do, like your time that you devote, to take care of your needs and fill your bank account. Like, all of that is at its baseline, I think, the most valuable currency. And so I find it's such an important part of being a practitioner, is to value your time appropriately. And I say that, but I still struggle doing it, because it's true. Like, all of the things that Michaela was saying is like, is this making it inaccessible? And who do I get to serve when I have a certain rate? And it's unfortunate that, we can't serve underprivileged people and folks more with Reiki. But I think we also have to look at ourselves as being somewhat underprivileged too, as Reiki practitioners, given that we don't have, traditional access to health insurance, to retirement, to paid time off. So, I think you can only give from a full cup. So a lot of times I see within the Reiki culture, a lot of giving away from an empty cup, actually. And I just don't think that that's good energy. Personally, don't think it's a proper energy exchange. I think we all can do a little bit better to value our time. And
drawing that line, yeah, absolutely. Connecting that idea that what has happened as a housewife is actually happening in other professions, in that we're not valued for the work that we would do. Yeah. And how we take that into other professions. So as a society, so that's what I think that could possibly be one of the main issues behind asking for money for Reiki treatments, for example. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of excuses that people will put around it or whatever, but what is it really coming back to? Why do we feel that we need to give our time freely? Our time, which is something, as we've spoken about and Carrie, I know you've spoken about this a lot, you know, that you've spent so much money, for example, trying to always upskill, educate, be the best that you possibly can be. And yet you're not able to ask for money. It's not, is what you're doing, what your time is not of value. And I can see a definite, you know, correlation with this idea of the woman as housewife, which today may not be. I know that it is still happening, of course, but of course it was worse in the past. You know, we were talking about those things just before, that we didn't have the rights. Now we do have rights, but what do we do? How do you, I mean, thinking of you, Carrie, but also you, Michaela, you're a single mum, you know, how do you do everything?
Yeah. Well, and it's an interesting thing around, you know, the right to earn, right? Because for me, the goal of equality and, you know, feminism and such should be that each of us are able to craft our life the way that actually works for us and our family. So that it's not to say that somebody who chooses to stay at home and, you know, hold a more traditional role of being the in-home caregiver who is not paid money for her time, that shouldn't be valued. The question is, does that work for the people involved, right? You know, I came to a certain realization at a certain point that I had always just assumed that I would need to work because, you know, certain economic factors starting in the late 70s, early 80s, when you were citing the statistics, that changed the tax laws and changed income laws, at least in the United States, in ways that kind of flatlined earnings, and that kind of made it so that women had to work, that the two-income household became almost a necessity for the middle class and certainly the working class. And so the opportunity for one person to stay home and, you know, hold that work inside of the home and one person to work became much more unachievable, right? And so I came to a certain realization that I would actually have loved to be a stay-at-home person and care for the house and care for the kids and, you know, do creative work and work that I love without the pressure of having to earn a ton of money. But that was just not my reality. And so given that that wasn't my reality, I needed my work to count. You know, I needed it to be compensated. And when I was married, you know, oftentimes it was my husband who stayed home and spent time caring for the children and caring for the house, and I was always the kind of front, you know, or income earner. But again, back to the idea that what we're looking for here is choice. What we're looking for is freedom to craft our lives the way that actually works for us. And so if a person has a lifestyle that allows them to give of their time freely and share Reiki for low or no cost, and that feels right to them, it feels in alignment with how they want to work, it feels, you know, they just want to share Reiki because it, you know, fills them, and, you know, being compensated by money doesn't feel good for whatever reason, but also isn't necessary for them because their needs are met in other ways, then that's great, right? But too many of us put ourselves in a situation where our needs are not being met, and we're still struggling to say what we're worth, what our time is worth. And, you know, I know there's conversations that often crop up around this within Reiki communities and probably within other kind of spiritual wellness communities around whether something like Reiki, like morally should be charged, you know, if there should be money exchange for something that's universal, you know, energy. And oftentimes, you know, one of the replies that is shared in that conversation bears repeating, which is that, you know, yes, Reiki as an energy is what we all are. It simply is what we are. But practicing the system of Reiki, which is a set of skills that requires an investment of time and money to achieve them, is what is being shared. It is what is being exchanged for. And as you were just saying, Bronwen, you know, our time is absolutely valuable, you know, inside of a society where transactions is how we get our needs met. And so, you know, the question really comes down to, what are my financial needs? Are they being met inside of my household, you know, through whatever streams of community, of reciprocity, of income earning, of barter and exchange, of sharing space? are my needs being met? And if they're not, is there something inside of me that's preventing me from getting those needs met? In particular, stating clearly what my time is worth and requiring that be compensated. And if we're struggling with that, if there's something inside of us that's like, I don't even know how to set that value, or I just, when I look at what this kind of time, this kind of work on the open market to earn what I need to, have my lifestyle, and I just don't feel good about charging that, then that's work that we need to do, right? Because if this is what we've chosen to spend our time doing, sharing the system of Reiki beyond a personal practice, if we want to have our Reiki practice be a personal practice, that's just our private time. But if we've chosen to share this and spend our time sharing it with others, then we need to take a really honest look about whether or not we're spending our time in a way that gets our needs met, and then make adjustments as needed, because it matters to our future and to our families.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Any profession that someone does, if they have enough money and they want to, they could do it for free. Yeah. Whether it be a lawyer, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher. Yeah. However, it's generally not how things go, because even if people have enough money, I mean, if I was a very rich, I don't know, I'm going to say lawyer, whatever, right? I'd still charge money. Though, of course, I could do some pro bono work as well, right? So, that gives me the opportunity to be more flexible, as you're saying. And I think that we value that person, and we're more than happy to pay them for their time and their services, because we value them. And that, I think, is probably what we're talking about. Yeah. And it's not just other people valuing our services, it's us valuing our services. And that's where we begin from, right? So, when we look at the issues about money, so, I think words have already come up about shame, our feelings can be so strong around money, how we feel about it, and us individually as a person. Yeah. So, shame or guilt, not being able to, we feel guilt for all different things, that we might need to ask for money. For example, in Carrie's position, when you weren't working, what do you do? Do you have to ask for money? I mean, these are really difficult things for us, and it's our self-esteem as well. Are we good enough to be able, do we feel that we are worth enough to actually ask for money as a practitioner and a teacher? Or those feelings are really murky. And you were saying that, Michaela, before, and I think something that what we really need to do is to sort all this out, is to be able to have a clearer understanding of what those feelings are for us. So within the system of Reiki, what do? We have practices that we do, which are self-work practices. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So coming back, yes, go for it.
Well, I just, part of the thesis of this podcast is that it all comes back to the precepts, right? Yeah. And so if we're truly regarding ourselves with compassion, and regarding, those in our lives with compassion, then we would be able to see our worth and name it, right? We would value our time, we would value our worth. That is compassionate to ourselves, to value ourselves. If we were compassionate to others, we would, find ways to meet our needs financially, and also find ways to be generous and to share, our gift with people from wide ranges of income abilities, right? Yeah. And there are many ways of doing that in a way that feels, sustainable for me, for example, and also, generous and in integrity. When we're truly grateful for what we have, and we're truly grateful for the moment just as it is, there's a relaxation that comes that allows, at least for me, a certain expansiveness that lets me relax around all of those murky feelings and allows me to see the just the true value of what there is. And there's a way in which that relaxes the tension around charging money. And then of course, if we're letting go of fear, right, of not having enough, we're unattached to the fear of what people will think of us if we name a price that seems too high or devalue ourselves. We let go of anger about how we've been treated historically or in our own lifetimes. All of that helps us to be in a place of groundedness, a place of focus, a place of spaciousness and resilience when it comes to this question of how will I get my needs met financially, given that that is the system that we live inside of. And one of the things that I've found in the last couple of years, in particular related to this pandemic experience that we're, still inside of, is that the economic disruption that happened, when my business shut completely down for several months, because pretty much everything was in-person oriented, that the work that I had been doing for so long with the precepts and with the system of Reiki allowed me to not fall into fear about that. And my gratitude for what was already present allowed me to not fall into fear about it. And all of a sudden, all kinds of creative avenues for getting needs met opened up. Like this whole barter system that has developed in my community, developed around this period of time when a lot of us just weren't making money, because stuff had shut down. And so that's a way in which working with the precepts for me has allowed just relaxing of the tension around the question of money, more creativity, more flexibility, more willingness to receive from different places in different ways, and seeing that our needs can get met in a wide variety of ways. And that has made a tremendous difference with where I'm at now with my business. And frankly, it allowed me to relax enough to raise my prices this year for the first time in a very long time. And to not feel at all bad about that. Feel like, yeah, this is absolutely right and good. And to even raise them a little bit higher than what the kind of industry standard in my immediate community is for Reiki services, to really take a look at that and say, this might be the standard. This might be what most people are charging for these services, but we're all undercharging. So it's like, if I'm going to baseline myself with what everybody else is doing, because that's, generally a decent business strategy, right? To not go dramatically higher or lower than the rest of the playing field. But if the playing field is intentionally unlevel, right, it's already not in a good place.
Yeah.
I'm not doing any of us any favors staying there, so let me bring the bar up a little bit, and maybe others will do the same.
Yeah, I've always refused to sort of play the playing field look. I always, when setting prices, I always looked at what I needed to live with. what I mean, it wouldn't have helped knowing what anyone else does in a way, because if I need to exist, what do I need to exist, and how do I do that? And I don't mean exist as in poverty. I mean to live the life that I want to live. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really important. And I think people do get sucked into that, especially as you're saying, Michaela, this idea of undercharging. Yeah. Which I do think has been an issue. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's so important to really look deeply for ourselves around what does it take to get our needs met? And I know for me that there was actually a lot of chaos around that feeling, and being like really honest and open with myself. Like, this is how much I want to earn. Like, and I deserve that, I deserve that. And I think it's something that I see a lot, I think, in other, healing arts practitioners, just not being mindful of what you really need to earn, and not knowing what to do when you're not earning what you need to earn. And so I know that I've been in some sticky financial situations over the course of my career, and been some highs and lows. And I can say that I honestly have pulled from Reiki so much to help me in those moments where I just didn't know how I was going to pay a bill, or how something was going to come through. And, similar to what Michaela was talking about, how the precepts really grounded her in that. I think maybe I wasn't like so consciously calling in the precepts, but when I think about just being true to your way, or working hard and being diligent around what it is that your work is, that was really helpful for me. And so after, kind of being with the chaos, or being with the emotional overwhelm, or scarcity, or fear around not having enough, if I kind of could snap myself out of that, what I felt was a sense of empowerment. Like, okay, this is what I have in my heart right now to offer people, to put it out there. So whether it be like a workshop that I wanted to teach, or a Reiki training, or, sharing more to my community about wanting to do a certain type of service for them, what I needed, like there was always almost a one-to-one match of like what I needed is what I got. And I'd still say that I'm still working on overcoming that and being more like, this is what I need to thrive. So I want that one-to-one match of what I need to thrive. But there's just so much challenge. And so I think being really clear around what it is that you need to earn in order to make a decent living, to get over, overcome financial obstacles. When somebody is in a disempowered state, they're more than likely like going to be avoidant of those questions. But it's really looking at those questions and addressing them head on in our life is, I think, the best way to actually get some progress there. And so I'm always really mindful of like, how much time do I have? How many Reiki sessions can I do in a day? And all of that really feeds into my rate. And I'm due for a rate increase. And I think we all are.
That's the first thing we're going to do when we leave today. No.
We're probably all going to be increasing our rate. And I've also dealt with a circumstance where people really didn't value what I had to offer. And there's been plenty of times in my career as a woman, like men in particular, don't seem to like acknowledge or even understand that me to be sitting in front of you and holding space for your healing has like a whole, range of bills associated with it that like, I do need to be accountable to that, and I need to be in integrity with that. Otherwise, I'm there's just a poverty contract that you're basically
Right.
playing out in your life if you're not willing to be real with what it takes to be you as a person. And I know for my mother, I think of her, and I know that's like that was such a huge issue for her. It was such a struggle, but what she offered and what she gave was such a gift. It was absolutely invaluable. And if you even tried to put a value on it, my mom would be like a millionaire right now.
No, it's a gazillionaire these days.
Zillionaire, yeah. Yes. And all women do. And I mean, also, I just really want to acknowledge you, Michaela, for being a single mom. That is also like a huge heartstring pull. I mean, it's really challenging to have to balance that, needing to earn and also wanting to be a mom. And I feel like for me, one of the blessings I've had and the privilege that I've had is I got to do a little bit of both. Like I'm home with my kids a couple days a week, and I'm also, working a few days a week. So I have that freedom and flexibility, which is something that I think so many women are just starving for. And corporate cultures don't necessarily allow for that kind of freedom. And one other thing I could say about this topic is that also being clear about time is the ultimate currency that we're exchanging with people. It's, I think, important to acknowledge also how much time it takes to show up for our family and to do the things that we do. And I know for myself, as I've kind of really had to battle some of this patriarchal culture, like in my marriage and how I was raised in the workforce, all of those places, is that it tends to be a very unhealthy expectation of what one can do in an hour. for working for your family or doing something for free, or all of the things that it takes to raise a child and or get them to school. And for me, that's like sometimes a 3-hour project in the morning. It's a whole thing. So that's where I've been really grounded in, is just that time being that currency, and then how do I place that value on it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Carrie, I don't know if you remember this. Carrie and I met in our business coaching program specifically for women and solo entrepreneurs. And I don't know if you remember this meditation that they did at some point, I think early on in the program, but we would always begin with the meditation and some way of dropping in and kind of connecting with each other and with whatever was up for each of us personally, and then kind of with the mystery as well. And she invited us to think about what we make right now, what is our current earning, and then imagine if we made twice that. And we kind of sat with that for a while. It's like, okay, what about 3 times that? What does your life look like? What does it feel like? Okay, 5 times, right? And there was an interesting thing that started happening around there, right? Like different experiences for different people. And then she goes, what if you were making 10 times that? Doing the work that you're doing. So for us, Reiki practitioners, you're making 10 times. And, this wasn't necessarily to say you're going to go and make 10 times what you're making right now, but it was to play around with these feelings that we've been talking about. What happens inside of your body if you open yourself to that kind of possibility? And it was such a range of things, right? It was a range from incredible joy and abundance and like, whoa, the possibility of that would be amazing. And yeah, I could set a number like that as a stretch goal and, let that pull me towards it, all the way to like deep shame at the thought of earning that kind of money. And then of course, a lot of just resistance, like a lot of like, it's not possible. I don't deserve it. This type of work could never get me there. A lot of things based in fear. And it was just really interesting kind of playing with like seeing where each of us fell on that spectrum. Like, how did we feel if we imagined doing the work that we love, that we feel called to do, that's absolutely our purpose, that contributes value to the world every single day, and earning 10 times what we're currently making. She might have even gone higher than that. I don't remember, but it was just a fascinating process for really quickly finding out what our relationship is.
Yeah, and our intolerance, right? Like there's certain points where like I remember doing that meditation quite vividly, and it was really profound for me too. Yeah. One that maybe we could offer out to our community at some point. But I think important in the conversation too is like also not to get hung up on a certain number. And that goes back to what Bronwen was saying about self-worth as well. And again, like relating to the work we do, our lifestyle is also invaluable. It's been really healing for me, because I can also look back at the things that I've had an ability to accomplish in my career, like leading international yoga retreats and Reiki trainings in other places around the world, and doing it all with children by my side. And those experiences are just, they will warm my heart when I'm old. So it's also about this lifestyle that we're choosing to gift ourselves to.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when we're just really, I can get really stuck on my problem. Whatever's my challenge or my current problem, it's like my mind just focuses in on that thing. And I'm always trying to work it out, like with that problem and solve that problem. And it typically doesn't work that way. It's like when I can expand myself through gratitude, I can see the challenge from a different lens. And so I think that's also too really about remembering our lifestyle and how we want to live and how we want to show up, and putting value in that, even if it doesn't necessarily equate to a 6-figure income or whatever it is our financial goal is.
Yeah, I think a good word that came up in the conversation, and Michaela used it, is the word relax. And, money, when we talk about money, relax is probably the last thing that comes to mind, isn't it? But if we can actually relax and not get, and Carrie, you saying about, numbers, don't worry about numbers. In a sense, you're right. It's like when we get so fixated on things and we have to create these structures like, yes, I charge every treatment, I do this. I value myself. I would never do, this is an inflexible attitude. And in reality, we do need to relax, and we need to not actually take it quite as seriously as we do. Maybe seriously is the wrong word there, but bringing up the pandemic, I thought was really interesting as well, because it did allow people to see their lives in a different light. And that light may not have been one that totally focused around earning an income, because at a time that may not have been possible. So how do we survive if we're not? And yet we did, so that in itself was an amazing lesson, I think, for many people.
I think so. And I think it's one that's going to be with us. I mean, we've been, as a culture, we've been changed by it fundamentally. So it's like, we are now different than we were before, individually and collectively, in ways that remain to be seen. Right. And in ways that are for the good and ways that are not. But around this point that you were just making, again, how do we get our needs met? What are our needs and how do they get met? And we live in a culture that's hyper fixated on getting needs met through money. Yeah. And so it's understandable that so many people have so much fear around money, because the belief is that is the only way to get your needs met. And if you don't have enough of it, you're not going to get your needs met. And that, as I said, that was something that got totally challenged for me during this time. And now, even though my business is, fully reopened and has been for some time, I now routinely get needs met through different ways that don't have to do with money, that have to do with relationship, that have to do with community, that have to do with sharing resources, with generosity, with compassion, with gratitude, and with ingenuity, right? And with sharing space. I had a couple of rooms in my house that weren't being used. I'm now renting them to another family, and which I never thought I would do, because I like living alone, in a certain sense. But, we've now created a household, right, together, a community together. And so that's a tremendous load off of my financial needs, because, I have this rental income. And so creativity is something that does come when things get challenged. And that's one of the things that's been really heartening about this time, is seeing that the ways in which people understand their needs to be met has expanded in a lot of ways. And that's not to minimize the incredible difficulty that many of us have also gone through, and that for, not everybody is going to be able to access community and, reciprocity and generosity in the same way. And so that's not universally true for all of us. And there's not access to, community resources for everybody. So just speaking from my own experience and from conversations that I've had, but, that's my hope, is that what's one of the things that stays with us is an understanding that money is important, and we need to have a relaxed, healthy relationship with money, but in the right way, right? Money as a way of accessing what we need to live, right? Because we often orient towards money as the goal in and of itself, right? The point is money. No, the point is resources. The point is getting our needs met. The point is having enough. Money is just how we've decided that we're going to do those exchanges.
Yeah.
And so having that healthy relationship to money, but also having, more of a connection with a wider web of resources. And to realize that the way that our society handles getting our needs met is not universally the way that humans have always done things, right? This is a particular moment in time where money is the primary way in which things get exchanged. It doesn't have to always be that way. And we can do that inside of families, inside of communities, even inside of nations if we had enough will. But certainly we can do it inside of communities. Yeah. And not letting that be an excuse then to not charge what we're worth when we do choose to put a product into the marketplace, like sharing sessions. Yeah. Both can be true at the same time.
Absolutely. When you were talking about the meditation before, what I was thinking of, I could understand this idea that when, doubling and quadrupling and that, there is a point where we, as I think, Carrie, you use that word intolerable, that that it's sort of like, you just think, oh, I can't do that anymore. But
yeah,
also within that, when we think in that way, when we open ourselves up, instead of being like this and trying to hold on and grab, when we open ourselves up like that, everything else frees as well. So it's not just that, it's also, we become more creative. We, ideas start to flow. It's like, well, if that were the case, because you wouldn't be functioning in the way that you'd be functioning now. You'd be doing something different. And instead of thinking, what else could I do? That it's a natural flow. When we see our life more open, that these things do just naturally come, and we start to see different ways of doing things and being. And I think that is a beautiful lesson from that type of meditation, and something for people to think about in their lives, and how they can just feel more freer and open and relaxed about money. Because I do think that it's about our consciousness of how we're feeling at some people might say, oh, I don't have any trouble with money, but that may not be true. And I would say that most everybody has some sort of, I don't know, anxiety or hang up of some sort that's been passed down through their family or through their own experiences. So recognizing that, and we recognize that through awareness, and we use the precepts, as we were saying, to support us in finding that awareness in our lives. And if we can find that awareness, if we can maybe if you were to go away and think about what you charge, before doing anything, just thinking about it, see what comes up. Recognize the feelings in your life. Recognize, if I change that, how would I feel? How do I feel about it now? I'm talking about feel. So how am I feeling? How am I feeling in my body? How am I, what's happening to me as I'm thinking about these things? And then let's say we change that. Let's say we change the pricing. How do I feel now? How's that making me feel? Everything bringing about more awareness into our life, so that we know what's actually going on, bringing it up into the light, and allowing ourselves then to make the choices that are going to better serve us. I think that's a really helpful way of working with a lot of the things that we've been talking about today.
I think that's so beautiful. And I think it's so true and resonant for my journey and what I've been through as a solo entrepreneur. And I think ultimately the thing that gave me the courage to make that step, and to step out of what would be like a regular paycheck and step out of an anxiety about my needs getting met, was that I just, through Reiki, was able to lean in and surrender to the idea that life supports me, and that it's safe to follow my heart. And when we can break through some of that clenching and that contraction, and open ourselves to the possibility, I mean, that's us blooming, and being who we really are, who we're meant to be. It is safe to follow your calling. Absolutely.
I love that so much, Carrie. It is safe to follow your calling. That feels like,
I think it's a beautiful note to finish on.
Yeah.
Okay. It's safe to follow your calling.
It is. Well, Reiki helps us. Inspiration and awareness to do just that.
Okay. Well, I hope you're all being true to who you are out there. And thank you for sharing today with us. It's been an enlightening, fun time. Thank you, my fellow podcasters. Thank you. And we'll see you next week. And lots of love in the meantime. Mwah.